Yesterday's prophecies, today's headlines. This is the Hal Lindsey Report. And now, Hal Lindsey.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hal Lindsey Report. There is a major world crisis unfolding before us, but few seem to notice. Maybe because it seems to be happening in slow motion. A headline on France 24 news service recently asked, "Has the world gone mad?" Those headlines are usually interpreted as analogies or exaggerations, but France 24 meant it literally. The article said mental health disorders are on the rise in every country in the world and could cost the global economy up to $16 trillion between 2010 and 2030. Let's put that number into perspective. $16 trillion is 4 times the entire annual budget of the United States. And these experts claim that mental health disorders will cost the world $16 trillion between 2010 and 2030, and will already 8 years into the period. Even if that number is wrong, even if you cut it in half, it is still a staggering sum. But the real story is here is not the dollar figure. It is the human torment. The World Health Organization, known as WHO, says that approximately 300 million people now suffer from depression. Another 50 million have dementia. 23 million suffer from schizophrenia and 60 million from bipolar disorder. The situation is even worse among the young, who found that 1/3 of the world's college freshmen screened positive for a mental disorder. A separate study by the American Psychological Association found that 1/3 of U.S. college students had difficulty functioning in the last 12 months because of depression. Campus counseling centers are overwhelmed. They can't keep up with the growing need. And the problem is not confined to universities. In several cities, residents now curtail their activities because they fear mentally ill homeless people. San Francisco City Supervisor Aaron Peskin said, "We've got increased homeless problems and people who heretofore haven't been violent or aggressive and now are. And everybody is at their wits' end." But there's an even more disturbing indicator of society's mental health issues. That's the dramatic rise in preteen suicides. Suicide in this age group was once almost unheard of. Not anymore. Between the years 2007 and 2014, suicide among 10 to 14-year-olds doubled. In August, a 9-year-old boy in Denver killed himself. The little boy had decided that he was a homosexual. The mother says she supported him. She blames his death on bullying from the 4th grade classmates after he came out. Sexual identity is a major factor in the suicide crisis. CBN News reports in the UK, young people referred for gender treatment increased over 4,000% in 10 years. The issue is so big that UK officials have launched an investigation into the increase in children seeking to transition to the opposite sex. The Federalist reported on a different kind of madness. Jane Robbins recently wrote, "Some physicians in the United States are performing double mastectomies on healthy 13-year-old girls." She continued, "The justification is gender dysphoria, transgenderism. The girl now identifies as boy and therefore wants to look like a boy. Often, little or no psychological evaluation is done to determine the underlying cause of the teenager's desire to mutilate her body. But these doctors are willing to give her what she thinks she wants. And your federal tax money is paying for research to validate this gruesome treatment. The World Health Organization recently declared that being transgender is not a mental health disorder. But clearly something is wrong when a boy thinks he's a girl or a girl thinks she's a boy. The science is clear. The male has the XY chromosome. But because it has become politically correct, some scientists now refer to the problem in spiritual terms. They speak of a person who is spiritually a man but imprisoned inside the physical body of a female, or vice versa. That's not science. That's a bizarre application of false spirituality. And it is leaving our young people confused and wounded. Is it any wonder that self-murder among the young is exploding? Suicide has now become the second leading cause of death among American teenagers. But there are other things also taking their toll on the mental health of the young. The Telegraph newspaper reports social media and video games are creating a generation of children with the mental and emotional immaturity of 3-year-olds, one of Britain's most eminent brain scientists has warned. The Telegraph is referring to Susan Greenfield, a senior research fellow at Oxford University. She fears that children are losing their ability to think for themselves, empathize, and communicate with each other. Yet another example of mental health issues on the rise is the exploding use of support animals. I realize that some people just want to take their pets into places that don't normally allow pets, but there are others who actually can't function without their support animals. Last week, Frontier Airlines refused to allow a woman's emotional support squirrel on her flight. Other airlines have recently had to ban snakes, insects, spiders, goats, hedgehogs, peacocks, and more. It all sounds like a spoof story from Mad Magazine, but unfortunately, it's the real world of 2018. There is an answer to the mental health crisis going on in America and around the world. For many of us, it's the obvious answer. Take your kids to church. Read the Bible with them. Pray with them. Many of you would expect me to say that, but numerous secular studies agree. The American Journal of Epidemiology recently published a report on the subject. It found that children raised with religious practices tend to have better mental health. According to Forbes magazine, those who attend religious services at least once a week as children or teens were about 18% more likely to report being happier in their 20s than those who never attend services. They were also almost 30% more likely to do voluntary work and 33% less likely to use drugs in their 20s as well. Of course, that study wasn't specific to evangelical Christianity. If it had been, I'm convinced that the number would have been even better. But the Bible gives us a warning here. Just because one generation honors God does not mean the next one will. Romans chapter 1, verses 21 to 22 says, "For even though they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculation, and their foolish hearts were darkened." professing to be wise, they became fools. We live in the era of futile speculations and dark hearts. The first chapter of Romans describes the decline of a civilization that rejects God. Verse 25 says, "They exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator." Verse 26 and 27 describe homosexuality as a major sign of impending social collapse. Then it tells us about the insanity that follows. Just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful, and although they know the ordinance of God, that those who practice such things are worthy of death, they not only do the same, but also give hearty approval to those who practice them. All this happens when a people that once knew God refuse to honor Him as God or give thanks. They exchange the truth of God for a lie. Because we know why it happens, we also know how it can be turned around. We, as a people, must fall on our knees before Him. We must honor and worship Him. Those of us who know the gospel must share it with boldness and love. Earlier in Romans chapter 1, Paul wrote, "I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes." The ultimate answer is Jesus. Last week, the Weekly Standard published a story on the turmoil now roiling in the Roman Catholic Church. The headline read, "The Catholic Church is breaking apart." John Allen heads the Catholic media outlet, Crux. He wrote, "The Church faces perhaps its gravest crisis since the Protestant Reformation. Through the years, many have taught that the Catholic Church is the apostate world religion spoken of in Revelation. I don't believe that. The world religion described in Revelation goes far beyond Roman Catholicism. But I do believe the current disillusionment among Catholics may be part of what leads to the formation of the coming one-world religion. Revelation chapter 17 says, "I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, having in her hand a gold cup full of abominations and of the unclean things of her immorality, and upon her forehead a name was written, a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of the abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the witnesses of Jesus." This woman represents a coming global religion. It will feature religious thoughts and beliefs from around the world. Her leadership will involve representatives from diverse religions. The word harlot tells us the woman is worse than unfaithful. She completely sells herself out to the immorality and debauchery. This stands in contrast to the church, the bride of Christ. Ephesians says, "He," meaning Jesus, "gave up His life for her to make her holy and clean, washed by the cleansing of God's Word." He did this to present her to Himself as a glorious church without a spot or wrinkle or any other blemish. Instead, she will be holy and without fault. We who are in the church are well aware of the flaws because We are the church. Our flaws are her flaws. But out of this, Jesus will somehow present to himself a bride who is glorious, without a spot or wrinkle. How? He has already done the work. He gave up his life for her to make her holy and clean. The harlot church will be the exact opposite. It will turn away from Jesus and his cleansing power. It will murder true followers of Christ. The leaders who claim to be Christian will prostitute the true meaning of being wedded to Christ. They will sell out to the false religion of man. It is sobering to realize that many leaders of this new movement will come from institutions and denominations that once stood for the truth of the Bible, the deity of Christ, and redemption through the cross. The new religion will seem to embrace all religious traditions, including Christianity. But it is a harlot version of Christianity. It will eventually be centered on the worship of a man, the Antichrist. Babylon is another term used for the coming one-world religion. Isaiah prophesied the destruction of the Babylon of his day, but what he said also applies to Mystery Babylon in the future. Isaiah 47:11 says, "Desolation shall come upon you suddenly." Verse 9 says, "They shall come upon you in their fullness because of the multitude of your sorceries, for the great abundance of your enchantments." The words sorceries and enchantments show that this is addressing Babylon's religious system. In verses 13 and 14, the Lord shows them the futility of their pagan creeds. "You are worried in the multitudes of your counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame." Let's look at the words of a close observer of Babylonian worship, the prophet Daniel. He tells about King Nebuchadnezzar having a dream. The king couldn't remember exactly what he had dreamed, but the dream really bothered him. So he called the whole gang to help. All the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans. Magicians refer to the wise men in charge of sacred writings, handling down through generations. Their earliest writings went back to the time of the Tower of Babel. Babylonian books on magic, astrology, and the black arts are some of the earliest known literature on the face of the earth. The astrologers originally meant the whisperers, but by this time it had come to mean conjurer. These men cast spells through the spirit medium. Sorcerers referred to those who worked in the black arts. The same word is used for the Egyptian magicians who confronted Moses. At first, those magicians were able to successfully duplicate some of the miracles Moses performed in Pharaoh's court. When God enabled Moses to perform miracles that they couldn't duplicate, they told Pharaoh, "This is the finger of God." The black arts came to Egypt from Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar called on his wise men for help and advice, but they couldn't even tell him the dream, much less the interpretation. Daniel proved a true prophet of God by both describing the dream and giving its interpretation. The religion of Babylon was a lie. It only had power because men chose to give their lives to it. It was empty but enslaving. Yet, in our time, we see it rising again. In the late great planet Earth, I call the coming world religion Scarlet O Harlot. Her actual title is Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and of abominations of the earth. It will be an all-inclusive diversity worshiping church. It will claim to be the ultimate expression of all religions. You've probably heard people say that at heart, all religions are really the same. This is the logical conclusion of their idea. That means, in addition to all its other spiritual claims, it will claim to be the real church of Jesus. It will claim to be united to Jesus in mystical marriage. In that way, it will be a spiritual adulteress. It will claim to follow the true teachings of Christ, even as it worships Antichrist. When I began ministering on the college campuses in the early 1960s, the world hardly seemed headed toward religion in any shape or form. Less than a decade later, that had completely changed. The world had gone religion crazy. Today, it's more extreme than ever. In the 21st century, even some atheists describe themselves as very spiritual. People in our time act to assuage spirits very much like their idolatrous forebears. Modern people arrange their homes and offices according to feng shui, an ancient Chinese method of controlling spirit energy. Like so much in the dark arts, that means trying to get demons to work for you instead of against you. Various forms of spiritism pervades the drug and music cultures. Spiritism fills video games, song lyrics, books, and movies. Try this. When you watch your favorite TV shows, look at the props in the background. You'll probably see various Hindu idols. Actual idols permeate 21st century American television, furniture shops, and restaurants, as well as art and novelty stores. Revelation 9, verse 20, speaks of people in the last days who worship demons and the idols of gold and of silver and of brass and of stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. If you think blatant idol worship is confined to ancient history, you are wrong. It's here now, and it will get worse. Millions of people today live their lives according to their horoscopes. Astrology is not a science, but a demonic religion that comes to us straight out of Babylon. Yoga is part of the Hindu religion with its legions of idols, but you'll find yoga classes in churches across the land. Folks, the world is slipping into a new dark age. Paganism again reigns. The rational Christian thinking from which America rose is waning. But thank God, there is hope in Jesus Christ, and you can claim that hope for yourself right now. It's easy. Simply confess to God that you are a sinner and can never qualify for heaven on your own. Admit to Him that you're sorry for your sins and want to be clean and made whole. Believe in your heart that He is the Son of God, just as God said. Then accept the free gift of pardon that He bought for you with His death on Calvary. If you do that, you will become a child of the living God and join His forever family. Then you too will be able to face the dangerous days ahead with peace, joy, and hope. Well, That's it for tonight, folks. God willing, I'll see you next week.
You've been watching the Hal Lindsey Report. To support this program, send your tax-deductible gift to Hal Lindsey Media Ministries, P.O. Box 470470, Tulsa, Oklahoma 74147. You can also support this ministry online. Visit hallindsey.com or call 1-888-RAPTURE.